And good afternoon, folks. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Make Your Brand Stick, Branding Your Nonprofit Effectively. My name is Eddie Francis, and I'm going to be your webinar leader this afternoon. And so just just make sure that when you have any questions, just make sure you reach out so that we can address those. Okay, and my apologies. That was a bit of interference there. I had some feedback. I'm actually monitoring the webinar on another laptop, so I just got a little bit of feedback, and I do apologize for that. All right. And if you want to be able to check out the webinar on YouTube, you can do that. It is live on YouTube as well. You can go to my account, which is Eddie Francis, and just search me, and you'll be able to see the webinar there as well if you're having problems viewing it on Google Hangouts. And one thing I will do is I will monitor both my feeds on YouTube, and I will monitor the feed as well on Google Hangouts in case there are any questions that I don't catch on Google Hangouts. I can catch those on YouTube. So let me just switch over to YouTube as well so I can check out the feed there. One of the things that you will see is that there is a way for you to take a look at your Q&A feed on the Google Hangout. And the way that you'll be able to do that, you'll see about 9 little squares there next to the question mark in the upper at the upper right. And you can click that. There are two options. One is for showcase and the other is for Q&A. So make sure that you click those little squares and you'll be able to ask your questions there. In the meantime, by all means, if you can, just go ahead and send me a message via YouTube. Let's see if we're able to enable those comments on YouTube, so that you'll be able to ask any questions there, as well as Google Hangouts. And I have Leslie who is texting me to let me know how things are going. One thing I did notice when I was testing this last night is there's a delay. There's probably a delay of about 23 seconds. So there is a chance that I'll ask a question, or at least you can ask a question, and I won't respond for another 30 seconds. And so that's because of the delay that we have right now. So I do see that Halima sees the Q&A instructions, and she did acknowledge that. Thank you very much, Halima. I appreciate that. And I'm going to check my cell phone here to see if there are any instructions from Leslie, or at least any feedback from Leslie. But once again, you can view the webinar right here on Google Hangouts, and you can also view it on YouTube. Now, the very good thing about YouTube is that if for any reason you want to share this webinar with any of your colleagues and you want to share it by way of YouTube, um, please, by all means, feel free to post questions on YouTube. I will go look at the webinar feed. I'll check it out. And if I see any questions on that video that I can address, I will be more than happy to do that. So I will be able to address those questions. All right, so I do have a successful sound check. Leslie has let me know that she can hear, and she knows that she can hear me on both Google Hangouts and on YouTube. So without further ado, we are going to get the webinar started. So again, Just as a reminder, in order to ask questions, you have to activate the Q&A feature. The way that you can do that is you will see at the upper right hand corner the place where an icon might go for a picture. You'll see a little question mark, and you'll see 9 squares, or a square that is made up of 9 squares. What you do is you go to those squares, you click it, you'll see options for either showcase or Q&A. Click Q&A, and that will enable your ability to ask questions. And I'll be checking as we go along to make sure that I do address those questions. And again, if for any reason it seems like it's taking me a while to address your question, that's because there's about a 14 to 23-second delay. So let's just call it 30 seconds. Let's just assume that we have 30 seconds that'll pass before I do address any question that you have. And it is not my being rude, it is the delay that we will have in the broadcast. So let's get started. So this webinar is Make Your Brand Stick, and that is branding your nonprofit effectively. The goal of the webinar is to provide your organization with a foundation to craft a marketing message that will fortify your mission and help you attract resources to serve your community. Now, I have to go back, and I have to thank the sponsors of the webinar, and that would be the Broward County Human Services Department Office of Evaluation and Planning, and also uh, you know I have to introduce myself. I guess that would make sense. My name is Eddie Francis. I am a partner, a co-founder, also the communication ace of Francis Communication and Development Partners. And we're going to spend some time talking about how we can reach this goal of providing your organization with the foundation to craft a marketing message, to fortify your mission, to help you attract resources so that you can better serve your community. Now, let me tell you a little bit about me, the presenter. I'm a native of New Orleans. As you see right next to that the series of bullet points right there, you have a nice, delicious looking loaded shrimp po' boy. That really represents how much New Orleans means to me. And it goes beyond the food because we are very connected to New Orleans. We're very connected to food. We're very connected to our feelings. And so we have a heart for things in New Orleans. And one of the things that we have a heart for is helping people. But we are people who are we are a town criers in New Orleans. So we're very good at forming messages for people. And so, um, if you think about the kind of message that you want to form for your organization, the marketing message, then think of how you can make it one big tasty po' boy for everybody. People are going to want it. They're going to love it when they get it. I got my Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication from Loyola University in New Orleans, and I've been in mass communication for over 25 years. I got my first job in mass comm as a production assistant at WWL-TV, which is the CBS affiliate in New Orleans. And then that was my freshman year of college. Right before I graduated from college, I landed a full-time job in radio. I spent 19 years in radio. I did behind the scenes work, and I was on the air as well. My best moments in radio was spent my last few years in radio when I co-produced and contributed to a talk show called Sunday Journal. That show is still running. It has won awards from the Press Club of New Orleans. Oh man, since 2009, every year has won awards. And I was privileged to win one of those awards. And that award, just so that you know, was for an interview that I did with a survivor of the Rwandan genocides in 1994. Her name is Immaculate Ilibagiza, and she did a really moving interview with me. about how she has forgiven the people who actually carried out the genocides. It's a really compelling conversation that we had. Um, and now I am a job recruiter and a speaker. Uh, with job recruiting, I still use the skill set of mass communication. And one of the areas in which I am really moving to use more of that skill set is employer branding. So think of it this way. If your nonprofit, or I should say, when your nonprofit gets to the point that you are ready to hire people, more people to carry out your mission, the way that you get the best people is by putting your best foot forward as an employer. And that is sending a message out to people that you are a nonprofit that is worth their time, their effort, their commitment. And so you brand yourself as a great employer. Now, I am also someone who had experience with higher education. Higher education is very much excuse me, is very much like nonprofit work. It's mission driven. People do it because they feel strongly about what it is that they're trying to accomplish with students. And I spent not as much time as I would like to have spent doing PR and marketing for higher education, but there were some very, very good years that I spent being a PR marketing director in higher ed. The highlight of my experience was helping to defeat a Louisiana House of Representatives bill that threatened to close Southern University at New Orleans. This happened in 2011. Uh, the bill produced wasn't necessarily designed to do that, at least not on paper, but what they wanted to do is they wanted to merge the institution, SUNO, with a neighboring institution, put them in a new university system. And so I was able to help lead that effort to defeat that bill. The reason I bring that up is the messaging was a key part of that. And I'll talk more about that a little later. For now, I still do radio, but now I do radio more as a weekly guest on the HBCU Nation radio show on WRVS, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and Sirius XM channel 142, the HBCU channel. And the reason I mention that is every week I get the opportunity to talk to the audience about issues of PR and marketing that I see in higher education, particularly, obviously, in HBCUs. So I said that there was a message that was very critical to defeating this proposal with the state of Louisiana. That's actually a picture of one of the press conferences that I did. And so one of the things that I learned was that along the way, we needed a solid message. And it wasn't just about that situation. The institution itself needed a solid message. Without a solid message, your organization will get lost in the shuffle of so many other organizations that are like yours. Oh, by the way, if I could mention one thing, and I'm not going to go back to the PowerPoint, but I'm sure you noticed that picture of that kid with that powdery donut that he was enjoying so much. That was my son. That's my son Stevie, and that's him eating a beignet. And yes, he did have some powdered sugar on his nose. That's how much he enjoyed it. So moving forward, I'm sure there were people who were thinking, well, wait a minute, who's the kid who's eating donut here? So moving forward, let's talk about what's going to create your message. There are two things that we're going to talk about today: marketing and branding. Now, marketing, as defined by the American Marketing Association, is the activity set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. Obviously, the word that I feel strongly about is value, and we'll talk about that. Branding, as defined by businessdictionary.com. And the reason I picked out Business Dictionary is because this is actually my favorite definition. The process involved in creating a unique name and image for a product in the consumer's minds, mainly through advertising campaigns with a consistent theme. Branding aims to establish a significant and differentiated presence in the market that attracts and retains loyal customers. So the two key words right there, significant. Your message has to stand out and differentiate it. Uh, how are you different or better than your competition? The foundation for your message is your mission. No questions asked. Your mission is your GPS for how to serve the community. It also helps create language to attract supporters, and it creates an identity that begets buy in from the general public. Now, you look at that and you say to yourself, well, duh, yeah, the foundation for the message should be the mission. But that's not necessarily a duh thing for everybody. You see, there are organizations, and this is something that if you took a look or you attended Halima's webinar on fundraising, she might have brought up an expression, mission drift. And what some organizations will do is they'll take a look at funding, they'll take a look at any potential donor, and they'll see that this funding, they'll see these donors are saying, hey, are saying, hey, we're going to donate because we want to see this kind of program, and this is an open call to come get this money. And so organizations will unwittingly abandon their missions because they want the funding. It's $500,000. Yes, I know that we do. I know that we do things for children to enhance their academics, but this is funding that prevents child abuse. And if the kids are abused, they can't do well in academics. And so people start to make these unnecessary sacrifices. Well, the minute you start to abandon your mission, what happens is your message starts to get diluted. As a matter of fact, your message starts to go away. So the foundation for your message is your mission. You cannot sacrifice your mission. But do understand this. If there is a conflict over your mission, then maybe it's time for the organization to reevaluate. Is this the mission that you really want? Is this the message that you really want to send based on your message, based on your mission? So that is a question that you want to ask yourself when it comes down to looking at how you want to stick to your mission. Is the message something that naturally comes from it? Now, I'm not going to pull punches about this stuff. I'm very passionate about PR. I'm very passionate about marketing. I'm passionate about branding. I'm passionate about messaging. And the minute that I see an organization straying away from the mission, I hammer them about what they really want the message to be. People have got to be on the same page. The board has got to be on the same page. The executive director's got to be on the same page. The program manager has got to be on the same page. The staff has got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to be there. So what we're going to do is we are going to address three questions. Who do you want to reach? What do you want to say? And how do you want to say it? Now, let's make a distinction. Normally, when it comes down to the work that I do with Francis Communication and Development, I'll work with a business and I'll work with the business on forming their message. Now, I also work with Halima on nonprofit organizations, but here's the thing that we need to understand. Messaging is obviously something that works for everyone. However, you got to understand that with a business, the message is used to sell a product or a service. That's something that the consumer can use. So the relationship is more transactional. So that's why businesses are making sure that they have strong brands. Now, for a mission focused organization, the message is used to sell a cause or a belief. This relationship is more emotional. So think about it. Think about the reason that you formed your nonprofit. You did it because you feel strongly about serving a group of people. You feel strongly about accomplishing a message, a mission. Yes, you definitely want to have sound business practices, but what drives your nonprofit and what drives your work is how you feel about that work. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how your message can sprout from those feelings in a very productive way. So, for a nonprofit, an institution, or an agency, the message is strongest when it touches someone's heart. And that even extends to my work with colleges and universities. The images of those institutions are very strong when they really touch people. And that is what influences students to enroll in a particular institution. That's what influences parents to want to send their kids to a particular institution. The feelings that they get. Yes, academics, definitely. But it's the feelings that they get a lot of times. So that's how I connect with the world of nonprofits using the experience that I have from higher education. So let's address this first question. Who do you want to reach? Where is your audience? And why would anyone want to contribute their time, energy, and or money to your cause? That is a question that I think is very healthy for a board to address. And I think it's healthy for the board to address that with an executive director and to also address it with your program managers. It's very important to figure out who it is that you are actually trying to reach. And so the way to do that is to conduct some market research. Figure out who's out there and how they feel about your cause. Now, here are three ways that you can conduct market research. One way, surveys. Surveys can be done in person. They can be done by telephone, which I know both of those are old school ways, but they're still effective. They can be done by snail mail. Yes, people still do it. They can be done, but they can be done online or by email, which is obviously the most common way to do it. The results can be reliable, very reliable, but it's a little bit based more on the size of the sample group that you have when you kick out that survey. Now, the second way is a way that I really like: focus groups, personal interviews. That way you get direct feedback from a group. Now the data can be a little unreliable because of a small sample size and you're talking about feelings, you're not necessarily talking about numbers or data, but it does provide insight about audiences' attitudes. And then the third way, if you want to get an idea of how a consumer reacts to your nonprofit or how someone from the community reacts to your nonprofit, and that would be through observation or secret shopping. That gives you an accurate picture of the customer's habits and the reaction to your service. Now, the thing about secret shopping is that that is much more focused on your performance as an organization. And still, even if the results come back and they are not favorable, you still have an idea of what kinds of people you're reaching, or at least it'll help you determine what kinds of people you really would like to reach. So, what do you want to say here? Your logo, your slogan, and I should mention motto too, and the core values communicate the conversation that you want to have with the public. Therefore, it is important to put thought into these things. I cannot stress enough that you have to put thought into all of this. And you also have to collaborate with the people who are part of your nonprofit. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit when I show you some logos. None of these should be based on the desires of individual members, but rather the direction of the organization. So once again, we go back to the mission. So let me give you some examples of of logos that I have either worked on or logos that I have seen, and the kind of work that I believe went into those logos and the rationale of those logos. So I'm going to be a little self-serving here. Well, okay, I'm going to be very self-serving here, and I'm going to start with the Francis Development or Francis Communication and Development and Partners logo. So with this logo, um, this is one in which we had a lot of conversation, Halima and I. I think this was like a week long or maybe a couple of weeks of a process of my going through designs, and I would show her the designs and we would go back and forth, and a couple of the conversations got a little intense, maybe just a tad, but at the end we got what we really wanted. So here's the philosophy. First of all, we wanted simplicity. Secondly, we wanted to be bold yet professional. We didn't want any fancy images. But then the other thing is we wanted something that communicated our sense of focus and authenticity. And this is what we came up with. Now, I'll tell you how we came up with this in a little bit. Now, here's another logo. And this is from my former employer. Note the word former. And I resigned. Nothing bad happened. But Southern University in New Orleans, when I got there, this was the logo. Now, instead of my offering my opinion about it, let me give you the opinion that I received about it. When I showed this to a group of students, one of the first things that they said was, this is just so basic. This doesn't tell us anything. I don't like it. It's ugly. Those are the kinds of things that students said. As a matter of fact, I teach a branding class for the nonprofit management certification course at Richmond College here in Dallas. And the class, when I showed them this logo, they said almost the same things. So this is where I decided to do my market research. I did kick out a survey first. Now, I had about 3,300 people to whom I sent this survey. I got about 100 responses, if I got that many. Not the sample size that I really wanted for the number of people on campus, but it was helpful because the survey results clearly said this is not exactly what we want. But the survey results also said we're not exactly sure what we want. We do know we want something that's a little bit more serious. And that was the kind of word that was used. Now, what I did to back up that survey was I did my favorite thing, a focus group. And in this case, a focus group was highly effective. So when I talk to the students, and I really, really concentrated on getting students for the focus group. When I talk to them uh, face to face, they had the same feedback. But the feedback that meant the most to me, and it was a game changer, one student said, give me something that I can put on a t-shirt. I don't want this on a t-shirt. And so I went to the drawing board and I decided to, once again, I decided to go for simplicity in this situation as well. And I wanted something that gave more of an academic feel. This was the result. Now, this is really simple, I know, but here's the deal with the top logo. That became the main institutional logo. One of the biggest points of contention about this one was use of the nickname Suno. What happened is they had some of the faculty and staff members said, well, I don't like us being known as Suno. It just doesn't sound right. This isn't what we like. Well, my response to them was, that may be how you feel, but here's the thing. This is how people know the institution. It is the most familiar name. As a matter of fact, I experimented. Um, I would call a group of students who were interested in the university, and I would refer to us as Southern University at New Orleans. Now, I know that my audience here is in Florida. We actually have a Southern University system in Louisiana, and the flagship campus is in Baton Rouge. There's also an agricultural extension. There's a law school. There's a Southern University at Shreveport, and there's Southern University at New Orleans. Well, when I called students, all they heard was Southern University, and they would say, I didn't apply to Southern, I applied to SUNO. So that's why we kept SUNO. And we decided to darken the gold a little bit in the logo. But students, when they saw it, were very pleased, and they did exactly what they said they would do. They started putting this logo on T-shirts. They were very proud of it, and it's very simple, but it's academic, and it is something that the faculty and staff members also felt was really representative of how they wanted the university to be perceived. Now, the bottom logo, the darker blue, is something that we decided to go with as an accent color. So the main colors of the university are Columbia blue and sunset gold. And we decided to go with this darker blue as an accent. And this bottom logo is what I rolled out to use on official university reports and publications. And the administration was very happy with the bottom logo. So let's take a look at another one. This is another one that I designed, and this one, and by the way, I'm not a graphic designer, so I'm very simple, very straightforward in how I do things. But this design is with an organization on which Halima and I serve on the board. And this is Inspiring Tomorrow's Leaders. It is a nonprofit that serves people in underserved communities who are in transition and looking for job opportunities, and they are trained in leadership. The Job Opportunity Program is our flagship program. I bring that up because in the leadership training, one of the things that I learned from our classes is that they loved an exercise that was done, the DISC assessment. And if you don't know what the DISC assessment is, it's a personality assessment. And so, with this personality assessment, what we found out was that the students were in love with how the colors were put together. And so, with these colors being put together, they found out that they were in love with finding out what their personalities were, what their leadership styles were. And so we decided to incorporate that in the logo. Once again, the board, we went back and forth about this, and we had several designs where Inspiring Tomorrow's Leaders was displayed prominently. ITL was a little smaller. We played with colors. When we played with the colors, the original colors of the logo were the traditional green, red, yellow, and blue. The board hated those colors. They hated them in their states with the disc assessment. And the one color that everybody just got too distracted by was green. So the final vote from the board was this logo. They like the fact that ITL is displayed prominently. They like the fact, or I should say we, because I'm part of the board, we like the fact that Inspiring Tomorrow's Leaders is bold, but it doesn't overpower the logo. And ITL, we like to refer to the organization as ITL, and we want other people to refer to it as ITL. And of course, you'll notice that the I is in red, inspiring. And you'll find out why in a little bit. But we decided to darken the colors a little bit. Now, where's the green? Because we still decided to use it. Well, green outlines ITL in the two periods in between ITL. So we made that very faint, but it's still a part of the logo. Now, this is my favorite nonprofit logo. And I've got to say, I searched for a bunch of logos. Um, my wife Halima, she consults with this organization, and I have always, from the minute I saw this logo, I have always loved it. Now, oh, great. And OEP Training is asking, do you know anything about what colors people respond best to for logos? Yes, I do. And we're going to cover that in a second. So this logo is actually kind of in response to how TMWF was founded. One of the things about this is this organization was partially in response to anti-Islam sentiment after 9/11. The organization was founded, if I'm not mistaken, in 2005. And so a big part of what they decided to do is they wanted to incorporate something that screamed patriotic, and that they did. And of course, Texas is the Lone Star State. So the first thing you notice in this logo is the star. You notice that it is surrounded by MW. You notice that at the top, MW is in red. So that's where you first notice those letters. And then you have the Texas Muslim Women's Foundation. And notice that Muslim Women's stands out. And that is because it is an organization of women. But one of the things that this organization likes to say is that there are Muslim women for all women. And the thing that I really, really, really like is that they used serifs here. They decided to uh, go for a look that was dignified and stately with the lettering. And so they really wanted to make that statement about the strength of Muslim women when they put this logo together. Now, one thing that Leslie is telling me right now is you can send questions to her and she'll put them in Q&A if for any reason you can't access the Q&A feature. So by all means, please feel free to send your questions to Leslie Brown and she will post your questions on the Q&A feature in case you cannot access that feature. The last logo I'm going to show you is with the World Wildlife Federation. And this one is simple, is very straightforward. It's a panda bear. You cannot resist a panda bear, can you? But I was trying to see if there were any hidden messages in this logo because I'm always looking for that sort of thing. And I don't know. I guess with this logo, the World Wildlife Federation, there's a big W in there, and I'm thinking that that is why the panda is at that particular angle. So to address the question about the way colors are used, yes, they are used deliberately. And this guide, I love it to death. And this is actually what Halima and I used to come up with the logo for Francis Communication and Development Partners. So you'll see that yellow communicates clarity, optimism, warmth. And look at the companies that use yellow. You have orange, friendly, cheerful, confidence. And then you have red, the most popular color. You have excitement, you have bold there, and then also you have youthful. Now, red is used a lot in political campaigns too, and it is because that there has been research that has been done, and the research shows that people respond much more strongly to red, um, and so that's why you'll see red a lot. As a matter of fact, I often tease Halima when we go to the supermarket because she's immediately drawn to reds and yellows on logos on the shelves. And she's not alone. A lot of people are. So that's why when you look at logos, that's why you see so many that use the colors red and yellow. Now, with purple, you have creative, imaginative, wise, blue, trust, dependable, strength. With green, you have peaceful growth and health, and gray. They would put the small letters in this gray and you can't read it, but we do see balance and calm with gray. So if you go back down to the Francis Communication logo, you see that what we did was we have Francis in blue, where we wanted to establish that relationship of trust with our clients, but we decided to gray that blue a little bit so we can add some balance and calm to the color. Now, green, we decided to use that color, but we decided to lighten the green a little bit. So we decided to use a little yellow to lighten the green. And then the purple, you notice creative wise. But look at what we did with the purple. We decided to use the purple on our little arrow there. See what we did there? See what we did there? So there you go. The color emotion guide. And you'll see, of course, in the upper right hand corner of the emotion guide that for diversity, there are companies that like to use all of the colors. Now, do I recommend if your logo doesn't have these colors, do I recommend you go back and start changing everything? No, I do not. Do what works for you. If there is a color that you feel works much better for you, and you don't want to get into the whole discussion about emotions and that sort of thing, that's absolutely fine. But there is research that shows that people do respond to certain colors in certain ways, and these colors can help you communicate the kind of message that you would like to communicate about your organization. Again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Leslie, and she will post those questions in the Q&A. Now, when it comes to what you want to say, you should know, by the way, that when it comes to colors, people do have a method of using these colors. And so there are codes with these colors. And one coding system is called the PMS system, the Pantone matching system. Most people use the PMS system for print. So, for example, if you have to use teal in something, then you would look for the PMS code. And the code that I found for a teal that I used on a project is 322C. If you are looking for the appropriate color for the web, there is what you call a hex triplet. So teal on the web would be 008080. So there is definitely a method to the madness. Now, how do you want to say what it is that you want to say? Well, first, let's understand what the communication process is. In the communication process, you have a message that is the center of that process. That message is sent by a sender, and there is a receiver. And the reason that I put that basic piece of information there is people need to understand that the process is that simple. The way you choose to promote your organization is the way the public will most likely receive your message. And so Halima has a question. Can you tell the story of your logo's design and how it helps your brand? I believe that's how she wants to word it. Um, and so I will come back to that question in just a second because I need a little clarification on what exactly the question is right there. And I apologize for that, but uh, just just give me a little bit more information right there so I can answer that question properly. So, how do you want to deliver your message? Well, let's look at the ways some nonprofits have chosen to advertise their messages. So, this first one is a domestic abuse ad. And in this domestic abuse ad, you'll see why it is so hard to see black and blue. And I'll read this for you. The only illusion is if you think it was her choice. One in six women are victims of abuse. Stop abuse against women. And so the message here is pretty obvious. You can't always see the pain, but the pain is there no matter what you may think of a woman and her beauty, or no matter how she may appear. Let's look at another one. This is with the World Wildlife Federation. Now, I showed this one to my nonprofit management certification class, and they took a look at this one. And interesting enough, the first thing that they noticed was the fact that there were some trees missing from this picture. Um, and they took another look of it, and then they took another look at it, and then they noticed that we're looking at a pair of lungs here. And so the message here is pretty obvious. We're talking about the danger of the destruction of natural habitats, also how our bodies are affected by the destruction of natural habitats. Here's another one by the World Wildlife Federation. Now, when I showed this one to my class, they did not like this one at all. They felt it was too much shock therapy. And of course, with this one, at the bottom, you'll see it says, "Don't buy exotic animal souvenirs." Um, there was one person in particular in the class who said that she felt that this kind of advertising is much more suited for the social media generation. And so she felt that this was really designed to shock people and to be somewhat sensational on social media. And I thought that was a very interesting take on this particular ad. But they did decide that they really, really didn't like this as a nonprofit advertisement. By all means, if you have feedback on these ads, please enter your feedback in the Q&A section. I would love to hear what your thoughts of these advertisements are. And here's another one by the World Wildlife Federation. And I'm not particularly stuck on this organization, but let's take a look at what they're doing with advertising. Again, you see the panda. And this one says energy production and use accounts for more than 80% of global warming gas emissions. The remainder is primarily for deforestation. I'll go to WWF.org. And so you'll see that this is another one that, again, is kind of a shocker. Now, here's a very interesting nonprofit ad. And notice that I did point out that it's a nonprofit ad. When I showed this one to the class, their very, very first impression was that it was an ad for detergent. They actually thought this was a laundry ad. They decided not to look at the bottom. They wanted to take a look at the images first. And so when I told them that this is an ad, and at the bottom it says child abuse leaves indelible damage within. This is a UNICEF ad. So when I told them that this was a UNICEF ad, they were actually shocked that this was a child abuse ad. They really, really thought that this was designed to be a laundry detergent ad, and they completely ignored that the one sock on the left says outside and the one on the right says inside. They decided to give a gut impression on that one. So the question becomes, how effective are these ads when they are done a particular way? And here's the one that had the most discussion in my nonprofit management certification branding class. This is a billboard that Halima and I saw. We were on the tollway when we saw this one. So I was going 60, 70 miles an hour. Well, I was going 70, 80 miles an hour. No, nothing more than 80. But anyway, so we were on the tollway when we saw this one. And this one, of course, it made us laugh, obviously. Look at the cat, look at WTF. And so we started saying to each other, oh, that's a really funny ad that the Humane Society put up. And we were sitting there asking, well, why did the Humane Society decide to put up this ad with this angry looking cat? And where's the funding? So then I took this ad to the class and I decided to continue talking about how the Humane Society put up this weird billboard. And one of the students said, well, this isn't for the Humane Society. This is an ad against the Humane Society of the US. And so I looked at it again and I said, well, when you're going at 60, 70 miles an hour, 80, then there are things that you tend to miss. So we decided to deconstruct this billboard. Um, and so, okay, I see the follow up to your question, Halima. So I'll get to that in a second. And so we decided to deconstruct this. And what we decided was this ad, which was actually by humanewatch.org, and it was criticizing the Humane Society for their lack of funding to animal shelters. We decided that this ad would probably have worked better if the Humane Society line were in bold and on the left, and then the cat would be in the middle and WTF would be on the right with with where's the funding below it, because you're going to notice WTF. You're going to notice. You can reduce the size of that and you will notice it. But we felt that Humane Watch probably did themselves a disservice, because if it's a billboard and people are driving by fast, they're going to naturally look at WTF, where's the funding, and they're going to they're going to see Humane Society of the US. So again, by all means, if you have any feedback on the ads, or if you have any input on what probably would make these ads more effective, or if you think these ads are effective as is, by all means, please let me know. I really want to hear your feedback. So I want to go back to Halima's question here. It says, for example, the design of TNWF's logo ties very closely to the mission and values. From people's first introduction to the organization via the logo, it invites the opportunity to tell their story. How does this support the establishment of your brand? Okay, I got you. Um, so basically, what we're talking about is the definition of a logo. How does the logo communicate the brand? And I appreciate your asking that. A logo, I always tell people this. A logo is like your signature. It's your personal signature almost. It's the personal signature for your organization. You're not going to see another one like it. Now, you may see one that is similar to it, but you're not going to see another one like it. So you want it to be unique to what it is that you choose to communicate. And so going back to the TMWF logo, the Texas Muslim Women's Foundation logo, that very clearly communicates that their mission is number one to to be um, to be true American citizens and to adopt some American values. And one of those values is to protect women. And so the organization, or at least to stand for women. So Texas, so women, Muslim women's, as I pointed out in that logo, is the most prominent part of the writing. And so it establishes the brand of the organization by being very bold about what it is that they stand for and who it is that they stand for. So, what you want to do is you want to keep in mind that your logo should communicate very clearly to people what kind of brand you are. So, let me tell you a quick story. There was a student that I had in class, and she was a board member of an organization. And when we started talking about logos, I noticed her shifting around in her seat. And as she was shifting around in her seat, she was just getting irritated as I was talking about these logos. So finally, I asked her, what's going on?" And she said, "All this talk about logos is making me so angry about my organization's logo." So I took a look at the logo, and the logo incorporated an animal, um, and it was green and black. And so I looked at it and I said, "Well," I said, this logo." I said, I'm not sure what this logo is trying to communicate." I said, "Is this an animal rights organization?" And she said, "No, and that's the problem." Um, I said, "Okay, so what kind of organization do you have?" And she said, "We work with kids as far as getting them more into the arts." So the entire class turned to her, and because everyone had seen the logo, and they said, "How does this connect to the arts?" And so what she explained was the executive director is a very religious woman, and the animal that she used in the logo was connected to a Bible verse that she loves. And that's how she came up with the logo. This goes back to what I mentioned in the very beginning. The executive director went off, she did a logo, she did it herself. Didn't even think once about the mission of the organization, which she helped create, by the way, and is geared towards kids in the arts. And here she has a logo with an animal on it. And it just didn't make sense. It didn't communicate the mission in any way, shape, or form. But that again reminds you, without input from the right people, you could create a signature that says nothing about your organization. So thanks, Halima, for that question. And thanks a lot for clarifying what it is that you wanted to find out. Now, um, one of the things I do want to point out to you is these questions are you're going to see these questions again in the post presentation test. So I just wanted to remind you of that because Leslie reminded me of it. Okay, now here's the last ad, and I mean it's a puppy. How could you resist, right? This communicates any and everything that this organization, the Pet Adoption Center, wants to communicate. I mean, it's a puppy. Look at the little guy there, right? And so you want to have the kinds of ads that will sell what it is that you believe in, and you want ads that will touch people where they live, whether it makes them feel warm, whether it makes them feel angry. Everyone is invited to put all in a Q&A if you like. So what are the forms of advertising? And I'm gonna kind of fly over these a little bit, but not too fast because I don't want to cheat you, because we are starting to run a little tight on time. But the forms of advertising, number one strategy is repetition. Repetition builds familiarity by forcing memorization. So an example of that would be if you decided to buy advertising at a radio station and you decided to repeat throughout the advertising 1-800 give now. 1-800 give now. That's right. Just call 1-800 give now. If you want to be a part of our solving this problem, call 1-800 give now. You hear this a lot, by the way, with lawyers. And you hear this a lot with, you must act now type offers. So repetition is an effective strategy if you really want people to remember a phone number, a web address, an email address, there's some piece of information. A claim. Another effective strategy is making a declaration through a claim. A lot of times what nonprofits will do is they will use statistics. We have served this many thousands of people. And when you show that sort of thing to your potential funders, that a lot of times is what moves the needle. When you make those claims, we've served this many people. But the true claim is to say, by serving as many people, this is the change that we have affected in our community. Association, aligning a prominent figure, a catchy jingle, or making an emotional appeal. Now, this is what most nonprofits do. Now, big nonprofits like the Boys and Girls Club, they have used this strategy by featuring Shaquille O'Neal in their advertising, Denzel Washington, and other celebrities in their advertising. Bandwagon, peer pressure. Now, as an advertising strategy, this really, really works for companies and organizations. But as a nonprofit, this is a successful messaging strategy when it comes to dealing with donors or potential donors. So and so has donated. So and so has donated. This foundation has donated to us. People from this community donate to us. And so what you're doing is you're kind of nudging that potential donor and saying, well, hey, this person is given. Why haven't you? And it can be done through an advertising campaign. It can be done through some sort of promotion. And speaking of promotion, another effective form of advertising is to use promotions, coupons, sweepstakes, games with prizes, etc. Now, this is a very effective strategy for nonprofits when it comes to events, especially galas, fundraisers. This is where you'll see people, they will get their partners, they will get their donors to donate tickets, they'll get their donors to donate products. They'll put these things up for private auctions or silent auctions, I should say, or they will raffle them at fundraisers. And this is yet another way of communicating to people. Look at the people with whom, or look at the organizations or the companies with whom we align ourselves. That also sends a strong message about you. Now, one thing I do want to address is that you see advertising here, right? So obviously, I'm sure someone is thinking, okay, now you're asking us to spend money. Eddie, we don't have money. Slow down. Here's what I have to say about advertising. It is an investment. Always think of advertising as an investment. In other words, you spend the money to get the money back. So that's why a lot of times when a nonprofit, like a local nonprofit, will advertise, they will advertise for an event like a gala, or they will advertise if they want people to donate to a particular cause at a particular time, an annual fund or something like that. So when it comes down to advertising, it is an investment. Do I suggest that you advertise in a particular place? That is up to your organization. You have to know where your audience is. Remember, we talked about that. So when it comes down to looking at where your audience is, a certain radio station might be right for your audience. A certain television station might be right for your audience when you find out whether or not they listen to a lot of radio or watch a lot of TV, or which stations they watch or listen to. The newspaper, believe it or not, people still advertise in the newspaper. You may find that the you may find that the audience that you serve, they are avid newspaper readers. You may find that out, or you may find that when it comes down to people doing the advertising, you may find, or at least your audience, you may find that your audience exists more in the social media space. They may be the types who take notice of the web ads when they go to a website. Social media has great affordable advertising. I honestly do like Facebook's advertising platform. I haven't tried Twitter's yet, and I haven't tried any other advertising platform. But it's a great cost-effective strategy that I do encourage you to take a look at. Now, we do have a new question. Can telling the story of your logo design help your brand? It absolutely can. That's a question from Halima. It can definitely help your brand because you know what really attracts a lot of people are the stories. And being a good storyteller is a highly effective way to promote your brand. It really enforces your message. And what I would say as far as pitching your organization, pitching your message, what I would say is find your best storyteller or rehearse telling stories and have about 3 to 5 great stories that you know will pull people in, and try these stories out on people outside of the organization. Those stories are often found in the people you help out, the people you serve. So the people you serve will always be the best stories. And if they agree for any reason, or if they can, for any reason, provide testimony, they can be a part of that story too. So the stories are very important. And yes, telling the story of how you came up with a logo or a slogan or your core values, those stories definitely sell your brand and they present a strong message, especially to potential funders. So, one thing I do want to point out is that when I talked about messaging, I did bring up marketing and branding. I did not bring up public relations. I love public relations. I can talk about public relations all day. Hint, hint. So, a follow up to this, I would definitely love to talk to you guys about public relations and how you can really make your PR work. Now, how do you want to say it? How do you want to deliver your message? Online outreach. Oh my goodness. I mean, obviously, we're doing this online. This is the way for you to take advantage of it. But when it comes to online outreach, the one thing that I notice that so many organizations ignore is the website. People completely ignore the website. I have gone to so many websites that are outdated. The content has significant challenges, grammatical errors, spelling errors, big fonts, fonts that are too small, too much content on one page. But the biggest sin that anybody can commit with a website is not updating their information. Not updating your website when you start a fundraising campaign, not updating your website when you have an event, not updating your website after you've done your board elections or after you've hired a new executive director, not updating it after you've hired a new program manager, not updating the website when you have new data on the success of your organization. This is a sin because for whatever reason, people consistently forget that the very first place that any and almost everybody will take a look at your organization is your website. So pay attention to your website. It is the foundation of your online outreach and it is the foundation of your messaging. Now you have visual media such as social media. You have Instagram, Pinterest, Periscope, Snapchat, Meerkat, etc. These are great platforms if you know that the visuals will tell the story of your organization and its success. Now you have more conversational media online, Facebook, Twitter, blogs, etc., giving people the opportunity to express their thoughts in long form. Now I have to warn you, I do have to warn you about this. One thing I will say as an effective messaging strategy is that when people get a little too wordy and write a little too much, that can be a turnoff. So, one thing I always tell people is that when it comes to a blog, try to come up with a blog entry that's about 3 to 4 paragraphs long, and not long paragraphs. I'm talking 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph. Facebook, we spend a lot of time on Facebook, most of us, but there's no need to make your entries so long. You don't necessarily have to do that. Um, and then you have audio outreach, podcasts, internet radio, iTunes. Podcasts have been very effective for a lot of organizations for a long time. And there's this resurgence of conversations about the effectiveness of podcasts. One thing I have a podcast, I have a personal podcast, and I host a podcast for an organization. And it is very affordable. It is an investment, and it's an affordable investment. My podcast, I sank $200 into the podcast, which will include buying a quality microphone. That would include the website, getting a membership to a podcast website, and then some other subscriptions along the way. Uh, but you might want to go a little further, do a little bit more high quality work, get a mixing board. You're not talking about much more. You can probably get a mixing board for $100, but a podcast can be a very affordable investment. And the reason I like podcasts so much is that you can do it whenever you want, however you want, however long you want. It is at your leisure, and people download the podcasts. So you don't have to depend on people catching you live as they would have to in internet radio, maybe. iTunes, if you have a podcast, you can send your podcast to iTunes. That can be set up as well. iTunes is on the tips of so many people's tongues, and it's a great investment. And you do not pay, at least from the platform I use. I don't pay to have my podcast on iTunes. And then there are e-blasts. Constant Contact, Vistaprint, MailChimp, etc. I've tried Constant Contact, I've tried Vistaprint, and right now I use MailChimp for a couple of e-blast lists that I manage, and I really like MailChimp a lot. But again, it is definitely up to you, and it is up to whatever you find to be most user friendly. There is no rule here. You don't have to use Constant Contact. You don't have to use Vistaprint. You don't have to use MailChimp. You don't have to do a podcast. You don't have to have a social media platform. It is all about what you find to be the most user-friendly medium for you. Now, one platform that I did not put up here is Hootsuite, Hootsuite. Most of us, present company included, we don't have time to sit there and do social media posts for hours per day. So what I'll do is I'll use Hootsuite to schedule social media posts. So you can sit down on a Sunday, you can look at Hootsuite, and you can lay out a schedule for the rest of the week and schedule all of your social media postings for the rest of the week. And that does include blasting the address of your website and that sort of thing. I want to go back, by the way, to e-blasts. Very advantageous for nonprofits. E-blasts are good because you have a captive audience. So if you have a database of 500 donors, take advantage of that database and send periodic e-blasts to those donors. As far as frequency, a lot of people like to do monthly e-blasts, and I think that's a good frequency. I think when you start getting into anything under a month, you're in danger of having people um, check out of your list, and you don't want to lose users. You don't want to lose subscribers, I should say. So I think a month is very reasonable. You might even want to do a quarterly e-blast. There are, once again, the only rule on this one I would say is there is such a thing as too many e-blasts. So that And by the way, that can damage your brand. That can definitely damage your brand because you can have people who will say, these folks are just way too desperate to raise money. I'm getting an e-blast from them every week. No, I'm not going to donate to them. Now, there are certain organizations that you might have noticed they do get away with daily e-blasts sometimes, and that would be political parties. But you have to think about this. Political parties, they have very, very passionate followers who don't mind seeing those e-blasts every day. At least not most of them. I decided to end my subscription with a couple of them, but you have to know the difference between one kind of organization and another. Now, I will say that the keys to success when it comes to your online outreach, regardless of how you do your outreach, the key is consistency. If you want to be effective, you have to be consistent. If you're going to do it every day, do it every day. If you're going to do it every week, do it every week. If you're going to do it every month, every quarter, however you do it, just be consistent. And above all things, be consistent with your website. Again, how does this damage your brand? If your website is not updated, even with the simplest things, then what happens is that people get critical of your organization and its brand. And so what they will do is they will mercilessly criticize the organization, and they will just be merciless about these things. So you definitely want to make sure that you are consistent in how you carry things out. So there are three final thoughts here before we get some questions going. Uh, Number one, effective branding is a process. You can't sit here today and expect something wonderful tomorrow. It is you, it is a team of people, and that team consists of your board, it consists of your executive director, it consists of your program manager, people who are affected by the brand. So it is a process. Please take your time and be patient. Number two, put real thought into how you craft your message. Again, this is a collaborative effort. It should be a collaborative effort because the way you craft your message will affect other people. And that does include your board, your executive director, your staff, and it will also affect the people that you serve. Number three, pay attention to how you are received by your audience. So when it comes down to how you are received by the audience, whatever signals people give you, pay attention. That doesn't mean if you have an audience that says, hey, I want you to change this, you need to change it. But what it means is just pay attention to what it is that your audience has to say. And so take the feedback for what it's worth. So there we go. We have those final thoughts right there. And I should, by the way, I completely went I went out of PowerPoint, and my apologies there. I did not mean to do that. Um, but this is how you can get in contact with me. So when it comes to the beginning, when it comes to getting in contact with me, by all means, you can go to Eddie Francis, and you can reach me at Eddie at franciscdp.com, or you can just go to franciscdp.com. If you have any questions whatsoever, we do have about 15 more minutes, and Leslie is telling me that we might have accidentally clocked out somehow, and I hope we did not. But if you do have any questions for me, by all means, please, you can put those questions in the you can put those questions in the Q&A. And so I'm taking a look right now back at the Q&A. One of the things that that OEP training did ask about any lower cost methods for advertising, and when it comes down to the lower costs for advertising, yes, I would say that social media is good low cost advertising. But here's the other thing. Um, if you decide to go with a traditional form of advertising, such as when it comes to a traditional form of advertising, such as television or radio or newspaper or anything like that, try to work a deal. Now, there is a chance that you may not be able to work the kind of deal that you want to work, but at least try to work some sort of deal. There's nothing saying that you can't talk them down, especially if you feel that is the best form of advertising. Um, and so let me see if there are any other questions here. Okay, it looks like the questions that I'm looking at are the questions that it looks like I have addressed. But once again, if you do have any questions for me, by all means, please feel free to email me, eddie@franciscdp.com. You can also go to franciscdp.com to find out more about the organization. And by all means, if you are someone who decides to share the YouTube video with any colleagues, then I will be checking on that video. They can ask questions on the YouTube video, and I will reply to those questions. I will reply to those comments, and I would definitely, I would definitely, love to address any of those questions that you just may have. So right now, by my central time clock is 12:18, is 1:18 your time on the East Coast. If there aren't any other questions that anyone has, I will shut this thing down in a couple of music. I might even bring my music back in a couple of minutes. I might even bring my music back to entertain you for a couple of minutes. I don't know if it would entertain you, but by all means, I would definitely love to have the opportunity to address any post presentation questions that you may have. So again, there you have my email address, and then you can comment on the YouTube video so that I can address your questions. But by all means, uh, do pay attention here, because we are going to have the post presentation questions that I will send to Leslie, and she will send them to you. Otherwise, I do appreciate your joining me today. I do hope that the information was helpful, and I cannot wait to talk to you again. And I never did apologize about having to postpone it for a week. I just had some serious conflicts that came up last week. So I do apologize for having to postpone. But I am glad that we had the opportunity to share time today. So again, thank you very, very much. Don't forget about that post event test. And okay, one last question as I'm wrapping up from Halima. Insight on personal brands for organizational leaders. Organizational leaders, and yeah, let me address this really quickly, because personal branding coaching is something that I do as part of the service for Francis Communication and Development Partners. Um, the leadership, the personal brand that a leader has does affect the organization. And so the leaders should pay attention to how they do handle themselves, but also how they address issues outside of the organization. So a very, very good example of this will be an event that I attended, in which the organization was one that provides social services. And the event was going great, and people were having a great time. At the end of the event, the executive director got up and decided to make statements that really geared more toward politics. And she didn't necessarily bring up any politicians or leaders that she supports, but her statements were very much rooted in politics. She got off script, and she did not pay attention to the fact that their organization, they made a big deal for 2 hours that they were making all these great changes in social services. And then all of a sudden, she made statements that were more meaningful to her personally than they were to the organization itself. As a matter of fact, had she tied her statements into some public policy issue that tied to her organization, everybody definitely would have said, "Hey, well, that was awesome. It was really good that you brought this issue up." But what it did is that it put her outside of the organization. She branded herself as something else. And because she did that, it kind of compromised the brand, at least for that night. It compromised the brand of the organization. But here's what I thought about. My thoughts were, if there's anyone in this room who has an issue with her statements, or even has an issue with the fact that she strayed away from talking about the organization's mission tonight, I wonder if that affected the way that person wrote a check, or if it swayed that person writing a check at all. So, in that case, that is where the personal brand of the leader really, really needed to be in sync and consistent with the personal brand of the organization, because she, as the executive director, is the face of the organization. So that is something that your leadership, they do have to pay attention to their brands, and that involves their public speaking skills. It involves the way they express themselves in social media. It involves the way they handle people face to face. They are the face of the organization, and any misstep could lead to any funding that maybe your organization could have had, and it excuse me, and it compromises the message. So as we were winding up, thank you, Halima, for asking that question, because that is an appropriate question and it does very much connect to the brand of an organization. um, if there are no other questions, and I don't see any other questions popping up, please email me, Eddie at franciscdp.com. Post comments on YouTube that I will be able to address, or by all means, look out for those for that post-event test that we're going to send out to you, and we will be able to remind you of a couple of things there as well. So thank you very much this afternoon for joining me. I really hope that the information I shared with you is helpful. And please feel free to share this information with your colleagues in the nonprofit community. I would love for them to get something out of this too. Many thanks to Broward County, and many thanks to the Human Services Department, Office of Evaluation and Planning. Many thanks also to Leslie Brown. I really appreciate the opportunity. I thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Oh, and by the way, have a very productive weekend. Bye bye.